Good Yontif. Oliver is long retired from his butler days, but he still misses his employer. Waiting for the day when he might be reunited with him, Oliver passes the time happily with a strict, solitary routine. He waters his plant. He waits for the mail. He listens to old jazz records. Every day for him is more or less the same. Until one day, his neighbor Claire knocks on the door, urgently seeking his help, and disrupts his simple and organized life. Having been alone and set in his ways for so long, Oliver is resistant to even opening the door. For whatever reason, though, he does. And once he opens the door to a friendship with Claire, he opens himself up to experiences he never even imagined, including travel, awe, pain, and love. A simple yet familiar story, except for one important difference between us and Oliver. Oliver is a robot and a character in last year's Tony Award-winning Broadway musical, Maybe Happy Ending. This play may be on the surface about robots, but like all good fantastical storytelling, it portrays the human experience, one in which we find ourselves mired in routine and inertia without realizing it, one in which we become increasingly skeptical or anxious of change, and one in which leaping into the unknown is uncommon and uncomfortable. Like many great pieces of theater and film, from Hamlet to Pixar's Up, this play confronts and challenges this reality and forces us to ask hard questions. Is it better to stay where we are, or to venture out and leap into the unknown? Is it worth taking a risk, knowing that we might lose everything? Is it ever too late to change? These are important questions to ask throughout our lives, but especially tonight as we begin a new year. We refer to Rosh Hashanah in our liturgy as Hayom Harat Olam, which is translated as Today the World Stands at Birth, or in our prayer book, Today the World is Born Anew. In other words, today the world starts over, and each one of us is invited to do the same. Such an invitation can be exciting and empowering, giving us the collective courage we need to take a leap in our lives. But what if we are not ready, or might not even think that change is necessary? Why is it so hard for us to take the leap? Science provides some answers. Psychologist Edgar Schein describes two competing anxieties in us: learning anxiety and survival anxiety. He writes, learning anxiety comes from being afraid to try something new, for fear that it will be too difficult. We will look stupid in the attempt, or that we will have to part from old habits that have worked for us in the past. This is the obstacle that prevents us from putting ourselves out there socially at a party, or putting ourselves up for a new position at work, or even from starting a new routine at the gym. If we think about Oliver, our relatable robot, he was comfortable in his routine, but it was his learning anxiety that made anything outside of his regular structure feel terrifying. Dr. Schein continues to explain that learning anxiety can prevent us from making decisions, and that the only thing strong enough to break us free from it is, interestingly, another kind of anxiety, which he calls survival anxiety. Schein describes this second kind of anxiety, though, as motivational, as, quote, the horrible realization that in order to make it, you're going to have to change. Here, rather than being held back by our fears, we believe that change is in fact what we need, and so it propels us to take the leap. Contemporary author and leadership coach Tara Moore describes a parallel juxtaposition between anxiety that holds us back and that which propels us forward in our own Torah, explaining that throughout our sacred text, we have two different words for fear, pachad and yirah. While both words in the Torah refer to a fear of the unknown, Moore explains that pachad holds us back, while yirah empowers us to leap. Now, we Jews are no strangers to fear, or, who are we kidding, to anxiety. We are a people who have had to respond to change and find the courage to leap time and time again, and have had to move from fear to awe, from stagnation to action. One of the most powerful examples of this in our collective history is during the Exodus from Egypt. Our rabbis tell a powerful midrash, biblical fan fiction, about a man named Nachshon. Pharaoh has given the Israelites permission to leave Egypt as free people, but then changes his mind and sends the Egyptian army after them. The army chases them all the way to the shores of the sea. And there the Israelites are, on the precipice of change, filled with anxiety and genuine fear as well. They look behind them and they see an army. They look ahead and see no clear path to safety. What have they done, leaving behind what they knew only to die here? Moses seeks advice from God, who tells him that the people must simply have faith and walk into the sea. While the Israelites are frozen by their learning anxiety, by their pachad, there is one soul, Nachshon, who felt that survival anxiety, the yirah. He looked out at the sea and saw not the fear of drowning, but the possibility of freedom, and he stepped right into the sea. Our rabbis tell us that he kept walking, even as he waded deeper and deeper into the water until it was at his neck. And just as he started to wonder if he had made the wrong bet, God splits the sea and creates a path of dry land for the Israelites to walk through. Taking a leap begins with small steps. For Oliver, his biggest leap was simply answering the door and letting a stranger in. And for Nachshon as well, his leap towards the Israelites' redemption was accomplished one small step at a time. We see as well in the story of Nachshon that his ability to leap was based on his mindset, his commitment to possibility, and his openness to the future. I often think about the modern artist Louise Nevelson, whose creativity continued to evolve throughout her life. She is remembered as one of the great artists of her time, but it was not until she was in her 30s that she even began studying art, and not until she was in her 50s that she came into her own as a sculpture artist, for which we all know and revere her. She described her art as a matter of survival, a way for her to navigate the world and contribute to it. Nevelson's life could be seen as a series of leaps, but this was because she believed deeply in a leap mindset throughout. There is a temptation in our lives to feel that we are where we are. But Rosh Hashanah calls us to challenge this, reminding us that it is never too late for change. I was recently at the 100th birthday party for a special woman, Bertha, and I met another guest who was in her 70s. I asked this guest how she knew Bertha, and she told me that they were actually new friends. She explained that one day these two women were playing mahjong together, and Bertha invited her to her house for lunch. The guest admitted that she was rather surprised by the invitation, and she asked Bertha why she wanted to have lunch with her. After all, they didn't know each other that well, and Bertha, in her 100 years, had to have plenty of other relationships by now. Bertha smiled and responded, "It's never too late to make a new friend." All afternoon at that birthday party, I met several friends of Bertha with stories like this one, who had been friends with her for varying lengths of time, all there in celebration of this special woman who continued to take the leap. So often in our lives, we find ourselves mired by our own anxiety, feeling stuck. But if we shift our thinking, if we place ourselves in a leap mindset, we can hold the feelings of potential and possibility, and when we do leap, like Oliver or Nachshon or Nevelson, even when it's scary, we can also experience redemption. Having a leap mindset is especially critical today in this chaotic and complex world. Like our ancestors, we feel the pain of the past and the uncertainty of the future. We know as well, just as they did, that standing still in our lives will not stop the pace of change. Contemporary Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld shares a beautiful teaching on the Hebrew word nitzavim, meaning standing. She writes, "A human being must be careful not to become too fixed in one place. It is one thing to stand still," she says. "It is another to stop moving altogether." Anisfeld recounts the biblical story of Lot's wife, an innocent person whom God spared from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. God told her not to look back as these cities were burning, but she could not resist. Perhaps it was her grief or a case of learning anxiety, but she turned back one last time to see her former home. Her punishment, of course, was to be turned into a pillar of salt, which Anisfeld points out in Hebrew, it's nitzav melach, or salt that stands still forever. Hayom harat olam. Today we navigate a world that is changing. How will we respond? Our lives are a series of opportunities. Every day we have invitations to make a new friend, invitations to try a new activity, invitations to explore a new place or a new job. And so often we hesitate or we reject the call. But Rosh Hashanah reminds us that the world is full of untold possibilities, that the world is calling us to leap. And while it may be frightening, we are not alone. Tonight we begin together, and we can support each other in embracing this leap mindset. Hayom harat olam. Tonight there is a knock at the door. Will we answer the call?